Hey everybody, Star Wars Junkman back again in the junk room. That's right, out of the closet if you've seen some other videos. But what do we got for you today? We got something really special. We're going to talk about one of the lost heroes of Star Wars. That's right. Over the last 40 years, there have been a lot of Star Wars heroes. From Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Boba Fett, Newt Gunray, to real life heroes like Dave Filoni, George Lucas himself, or Steven Sansweet. But we're going to go way back to the first real-life Star Wars hero. And that hero was a 10-year-old boy named Rusty Miller. So who is Rusty Miller? No, he's not an element on that chart I had to fill out during high school and never ever had to use again. Damn you, Miss Sykes! Failing me in that class. Told you I wouldn't ever need that shit. Anyway, so here's the life and times of Rusty Miller. Rusty Miller was born Russell Walton Miller in 1971. A rumor I like to make up is that he's the grandson of legendary band leader Glenn Miller, but that's not based on any facts at all. Russell, who was later nicknamed Rusty because he loved to lick old rusted pipes in the garden in his backyard, moved to Atlanta in the mid-70s. It wasn't until his mother, Nancy Miller, started working at a local drive-in in Atlanta that Rusty fell in love with film. We contacted one of his old childhood friends, Russell Tidwell, that told us the following. Rusty's mother, who was single at the time, would often take him to work with her. And to make some extra money, his mother, Nancy Miller, would go sit in cars with some of the lonely fellers while they watched the films. And old Rusty would sit on top of a popcorn machine and just stare at the movie. Sometimes he couldn't even hear it, but it would transport him into a whole new world. But in 1977, like many of us, Rusty saw a movie that transported him way beyond this world. And that movie, of course, was Smokey and the Bandit. Okay, I'm just shitting with you. We all know what it was. It was Star Wars. We all fell in love with Star Wars, and Rusty was no exception. In fact, George Lucas once called Rusty the true first original Star Wars fan. Childhood friend Russ continues telling us that Rusty was hooked on Star Wars, that he would watch it 6-7 times a day, while his mother was making some extra money in the parking lot. There seemed to be a lot of lonely single men out there in Atlanta during the late 70s. Rusty became obsessed with Star Wars, buying clothes, toys, posters, magazines, everything to do with Star Wars. Rusty had it. While watching Star Wars, he would often take notes and say along with the actors on the screen their dialogue. He studied and learned every frame of the film. As the 70s came to a close, Star Wars fever started to die down a little, but not for Rusty. Thanks to some contacts his mother had at the drive-in, Rusty was able to attain a 75mm print of Star Wars. He would often project this onto the wall in his bedroom and have friends and family come over for Star Wars viewing night. But it wasn't until Rusty was 10 and he saw The Empire Strikes Back that Rusty really fell in love with Star Wars. Even before it was released, Rusty would go around telling everyone about the new Star Wars movie and how if they didn't go see it opening night that they should have never been born or they should just go ahead and hang themselves in a closet somewhere. Rusty was obsessed with Star Wars. And 2 months before the release of Star Wars, Rusty found himself in the principal's office. Principal Stubach remembered to us about the day Rusty got sent to the office. I remember that day, he told us. It was late April, and Rusty had made up these Star Wars posters himself, and he was throwing them up and down the hall, into classrooms, into locker. He was making it a real nightmare for the custodian, that was janitor back in them days. And the principal walked up to Rusty and told him, "You go back and you clean up all those papers. I want to see everything picked up off this floor." But as Principal Steve told us, Rusty just waved his hand in front of him and said, "You will clean up the mess." Apparently, Rusty did end up cleaning up the mess, and he ended up 2 days in detention. It was clear to everyone that Rusty's attitude was getting carried away. And it wasn't just a nightmare at school, it was getting carried away at Rusty's home. In the early winter of 1981, Rusty challenged his new stepfather, Eugene Lansbury, to a Star Wars trivia contest. Now, I've talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood. I can't really pinpoint what happened. Although, it's clear that about 2:30 in the morning, his stepfather stormed out of the house and was never seen again. And if things were bad before The Empire Strikes Back, they got a lot darker after The Empire Strikes Back. That summer, when school let out, all the kids were out in the neighborhood playing, riding bicycles, having a good time. But what happened to Rusty? He disappeared into his bedroom, and no one saw him again until late September. In fact, he was even absent on Friday nights when his family would go to Showbiz Pizza. He finally came out of his room in late September holding the greatest Star Wars trivia book of all times, the Jedi Master Quiz Book. Before its release, Rusty told a local newspaper, "I had all these Star Wars facts in my head and no one would listen. So I wrote them all down. I got them all out. Now the world has to listen." But it wasn't until December 11th, 1980 that things really started to get out of hand.
That's incredible.
Rusty appeared on the hit NBC television show That's Incredible to talk about his book and to challenge host John Davison to a Star Wars trivia contest. However, Rusty, halfway into question 3, stopped the contest and declared himself the automatic winner after John Davison didn't know the name of Han Solo's ship. In an interview with TV Guide, Rusty explained, why would he waste his time doing a Star Wars trivia contest with a guy that didn't even know the basics? As his book hit number 1 on Scholastic's top 10 books to read during the summer, Rusty returned to school with a whole new set of problems. Ex-classmate Ken Obert explains, after the Christmas break, things just got worse. Rusty was always a smartass, but now he had a big ego to go with it. One day on the playground, he climbed to the top of the monkey bars and declared it Cloud City and deemed that no one could play in the playground unless they answered correctly 5 Star Wars trivia questions. They were hard stuff like, what model was Luke Skywalker's land speeder? Stuff that kids just didn't know back then. He would rule that playground from the top of the monkey bars with an iron fist. Anyone that didn't know anything about Star Wars, or anyone that he deemed wasn't worthy of Star Wars, they didn't get to go anywhere near the playground. Not near the monkey bars, not near the swing set, not near the merry-go-round. They didn't even get to play on that little spring horse thing. As the 5th grade came to a close, people were really getting sick of Rusty's attitude. When he threatened to write a sequel to the Jedi Master Quiz and call it Jedi Master Quiz 2, easy stuff my dumb classmates couldn't answer, the school had enough. He was sent home on the last day of school with a note explaining to his mother that he wasn't allowed to attend Walter P. Jones Middle School the following year. And that summer, things just kept going down for Rusty. When a reader found out that one of his answers in the Star Wars quiz book was wrong, Scholastic pulled his book from the summer's reading list. And then the family moved to Tennessee, where Rusty changed his name to Russ Miller and kind of fell into the wrong crowd. That's right. He joined the Star Trek Federation fan club. He still had fans out there, like myself, and we all waited for a sequel. But a sequel to his book never did come. In fact, not only was Rusty burned out dealing with Star Wars fans, he was burned out with Star Wars. In late 1982, he vowed to never even see Return of the Jedi. So whatever happened to Rusty Miller? No one really knows 100% what happened to him. There's been lots of rumors. Some people say he moved to California and changed his name to Pablo, and he's working for Lucasfilm. Other people said he's still in Atlanta. He's working for the CDC. No one really can pinpoint where exactly Rusty Miller is today. But there have been some sightings. A friend for Star Wars Junk told us that they saw Rusty Miller in 1995. I saw Rusty back in 1995. He was pumping gas at a gas station in Sioux City, Iowa, wearing greasy overalls. I rolled down my window and I said, "Hey Rusty, who made the castle run?" Rusty just looked over, shot me a bird, and then went back to pumping gas. There was even a sighting of Rusty coming out of a back exit after seeing Star Wars Special Edition. I saw him coming out of the back exit, a fan tells us. He looked distraught, shaking his head, mumbling, "This changes everything." And Mary Sue Dunlap told us she saw Rusty Miller in 1999.
We didn't even know each other. Then we got like, and I'm on TV right now.
But probably the most reading, credible sighting of Rusty came just last year when Danny Phillips saw Rusty at a local TGI Fridays playing Star Wars trivia and kicking ass. He said after the trivia contest, he was able to corner Rusty in the parking lot and ask him, Why was he playing at some local restaurant? Why wasn't he on the big time on some YouTube channel or winning lots of money with all his Star Wars knowledge? Rusty didn't say a word. He got in his car, shut the door. But then, right before driving off, he rolled down the window and looked up and said, "Someone has to." I don't know about you, but I take good comfort in that. It's good that he's out there in some local restaurant, some TGI Fridays, some local Moose Club, winning a Star Wars trivia contest for us all. Because there's a little bit of Rusty Miller in all of us. Thank you for watching. And Rusty, if you're out there, we're all still waiting for that sequel.